stunt performers don't just throw themselves off a cliff or something like that. Everything is within your skills and abilities that you've trained. If anything needs to be replaced, it is replaced. If anything is not up to a code, then it will be out of the show. And so safety is definitely the first priority. And there's a lot of adrenaline when you race down a set in a car, you start drifting around in a car or whatever you're doing. It's fun.
Welcome to the TheatreArtLife podcast, and hello. We're putting the spotlight on those who create live entertainment around the globe, the culture creators and the backstage masters. My name is Anna Robb.
And my name is Anna Aguilera. On this episode, we're joined by stuntman Ian Van Cleve.
Today's guest has been set on fire, hit by a car, thrown off a building, behind the wheel in a high-speed chase, shot and blown up, and all in a day's work. He has performed for live audiences in Asia, Europe, the Middle East, the Caribbean, India, the US, and Africa. And he's the writer-director for a widely successful Chinese stunt show, Project Blue Sky, running for its 5th year in Qinhuangdao, China. Welcome, Ian, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
What an interesting career you have in stunts. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
So I've been working in live shows for over 10 years now. It's taken me all over the world. It's really like a dream job. I've done a bit of film and television. I kind of fell into this job, as cliche as that sounds. I was working as an actor during college, kind of some small work, dinner theater, things like that. And I got hired at this place called Old Tucson Studios in Tucson, Arizona for a Christmas show because I was a singer. But they quickly moved me into their gunfights and started training me as a stuntman because they would do live gunfights at this theme park. And after about a year and a half, I was recruited for a show in China at a theme park there. It's kind of like a knockoff at Disneyland or something, a pretty interesting place. And just one job kind of led to the next. And eventually I moved into managing, directing, coordinating.
So who exactly is a stuntman or a stunt person?
I think that most people, when they think of stunts, they think of a stunt double. And that's someone who does something dangerous in place of an actor. But there's plenty of stuntmen working in that aren't doubling for somebody. Like in maybe there's a bar fight in a movie and someone gets thrown out of a window. That's just a stuntman doing that part. And then there's like daredevils, like Evel Knievel or Felix Baumgartner. So I think if I were to define a stunt person, it'd be someone who does something or performs something. I think that's the key word. Someone who performs something dangerous for the sake of entertainment or for a performance.
And in that, what is it? What is your? How do you stay in shape or train for something like that while you're not actually being in shows? And so, is there a preparation for that process? Because I can't imagine. Is there skill sets associated with that? How does that work?
I think if you're dedicated to this career, then you'll definitely in training as much as you can in your off time, whatever it is. If it's martial arts or gymnastics or whatever interests you. I also know quite a lot of accomplished stunt people that don't train. Maybe they don't have to, or the job keeps you fit, maybe. I don't know. It's really up to the person's own personal fitness goals, I guess.
You did mention keyword that your work or a stunt person does something dangerous. Do you want to talk more about it? Does it scare you? What's the realm of dangerous for you? And if it scares you, how do you overcome that fear?
Yeah, it is dangerous. And we say that we take a calculated risk. Stunt performers don't just throw themselves off a cliff or something like that. Everything is within your skills and abilities that you've trained. And it's about knowing your limits and how far you can push them. For example, if somebody is maybe someone starting out, they're comfortable jumping off a 1-story building onto a pad. That's like maybe 4 meters or 12 feet. And you could safely push your limits to maybe 15 feet or 5 meters. But you wouldn't want to go from 4 meters to 8 meters. It's just beyond your capability. It's dangerous. Like, it substantially gets more and more dangerous. So it's about knowing what you can do and how far you can push it. That's a big thing. I think that as far as fear is concerned, it is a scary job, and the fear is there. Like, it's we know the potential risk. Every stuntman knows the potential risk before they get into it, and that fear is kind of like in the back of your mind. No matter how deep you push it down, like, sometimes it'll come out. Maybe it's like before you go to bed, and it comes out and it's like, says like, what are you doing? Get out of this. Like, while you're in one piece, are you crazy? And so it's something you have to deal with. And fear has its place, but if it consumes you, then you're in trouble, especially in this career. There was, like, early in my career, there was a time when I, like, became consumed with this fear, and I kind of learned my lesson from there. I'd seen a few bad accidents, and then it kind of spooked me, like I could be next. So I was in this contract, and the only way out of a contract on good terms is usually with an injury. For some reason, you can't perform. And so I was terrified for some reason. And even though, like, it was all within my ability, but it just overwhelmed me. And so I kind of, like, was secretly hoping for a small injury, something big enough to get out of a contract. But, and it's one of those be careful what you wish for things, because it happened and I broke my wrist and I had like a 12-week recovery. So I think it's really your mental discourse is so important in this career, your focus, and you just kind of have to be on top of it mentally, physically.
It's a psychological game, right?
Oh yeah. And an important thing is that you treat a stunt with respect every time, because even though maybe you've done it 100 times, it's still just as dangerous as the first time. And complacency kills.
When you got hired for the job in China as a stunt person, did you go there knowing what stunts you were going to do, or were you part of that creation process? And how do you collaborate on building stunts for a show?
Usually you have a pretty good idea of what you'll be doing on a contract. And then usually there's opportunity to learn new skills and train and maybe cross-train, and which is great. If you have that opportunity, you can expand your skills and your repertoire. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second half of that question?
Well, how do you collaborate on building anything if you are creating in the stunt show? Like, how do you agree on what stunts are going to get done, how they're going to get done, and do you have input with the creative team on how that rolls out?
So my experience as a director for this show in China, most of that was kind of already decided by the producers and the client. They know what kind of show they want, what set they're building, and what will be in it. And then there is some, maybe in the following years, we can add stunts and add things to the show. Generally, I kind of just work with what the guidelines they give me and see how I can build a show around that.
And so what was in that show in terms of stunts?
This show it was a massive, massive show. It's a castle surrounded by a moat of water, surrounded by a street. And there's boats and jet skis on the water. There's cars drifting on the street, a motorcycle jumping 75 feet, rappels, high falls, fire burns, hand-to-hand combat.
All the things.
All of that. Yeah. And the set is extremely massive. It's like the size of a soccer field, and the audience of about 4,000 people. So it's a pretty big endeavor.
So you've mentioned like a wide variety of disciplines, and you also mentioned cross-training. How does it work? Like, do you specialize? Do they know like does your resume say I can ride bikes and rappel, for example, and then they call you for that, and then you cross-train? Is there like, how do you specialize? How do you cross-train? How do they know who to call?
So I think that, for a lot of people, they do specialize in something. Maybe someone was a gymnast their whole life or a martial artist, and they have a discipline, and you can get work with that, and any additional skills, is a bonus. And then for someone like me who had an acting background, I'm more like a utility stunt guy, where I have all the fundamental skills. There's kind of a base set of stunts that that every stuntman should know. And it's like a high fall, fire burdens, rappels, maybe some driving, some hand-to-hand combat, some things like that. And so also to get hired, you'll have a reel, a stunt reel, or, a resume, a stunt reel that shows what you can do. A lot of it, from my experience, it's word of mouth too, who you know. People will put in a good reference for you someplace, and they'll know what you can do. It's a lot, it's too easy to manipulate a reel or kind of exaggerate on your resume. And so people really like to hire word of mouth, because if someone knows what they can do, what kind of person they are to work with, it's just for sure bet.
It's a kind of an industry-wide practice, really, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And how do you like, you mentioned you got started because they asked you to do some firearms work. Is there a school, like if someone just asks you to do something and then you just fall into that, or like how, if I were to be interested, I think I have my share of danger scuba diving and working in shows, but if I wanted to go in, what do I have to do, or how do I get started? You said there were like a list of things that we usually, or you guys usually do. How do I make sure I tick all the boxes, and how do I get started?
So I wish I could tell you that. And it's one of those things where everyone has a different story of how they got in and how they got started. I know that there are some stunt schools. I don't know a lot of people who have been through them. Kind of the job is the school. It's kind of just, in my case, there was just an opportunity, and I stumbled upon it. And I think because this career is pretty, or this field, this industry is pretty open, that you really have to find those opportunities or stumble upon them.
And decide that, yeah, I'm going to do
Yeah.
that, and just jump in feet first, really, isn't it? That kind of thing. Yeah. When you're coordinating as a writer and director for a stunt show, what is that process like in terms of, are you working with the music? Are you working with the producer on the order of those scenes? How do you make the seaming of that together safe? And how long does that process last, like the process you did in China?
So yes, I'm involved in all those aspects as a director, as a writer. It depends. If it's a new show, obviously it'll take more time to develop than like a returning show. There's a lot of things to consider and take in mind. Of course, how many performers, what the set is like, the story, the music, the audience, the safety, what stunts you'll be doing.
And did you have a choice of what stunts went into that show? Did you say, oh, we should put motorbikes? We should, like you said before, that they included most of those stunts as sort of, I guess, the conception. But did you sort of get the opportunity to add a few things?
So my job kind of began after that was all decided. So it depends on the client, what they want, what they're willing to pay for, what they're willing to invest their time and money and build, and that kind of things. My job is really how to make that work and tell a compelling story. So I feel like, as far as stunt shows go, there isn't really, there's kind of a set of stunts that you'll see in every stunt show, and there'll be a few things that are different. Maybe they have one thing that's special, but for the most part, it's all kind of the same stuff. So you're gonna have high falls and rappels and fire burns, and if you have vehicles, you'll have a motorcycle jump or some cars drifting, maybe a car driving on two wheels, that kind of thing.
And what about the challenges of being in China or over being in America? Was it harder to be safe in that space, or like, obviously working from culture to culture is always different anyway, and maybe language barriers and stuff. So did you have a greater stress on that project than you would have if you were in, say, the States?
Yes, definitely. There is always a difficulty when you have a language barrier, cultural barrier. And I would say, because I've worked in many countries, and for example, when I worked in Germany, their standards are very, very high, and is actually higher than the US. That's really nice, because it's kind of a load off your shoulders. You don't have to worry about safety and and that kind of thing. But then there's plenty of countries where there is maybe almost no safety standards. And in that case, it's really, really more of a responsibility to be vigilant and check everything, and also stand your ground. Like some things that there's just no leeway for. We're constantly modifying a show, cutting things. Something's broken or not suitable, then if it's not safe, then you just don't do it. You don't risk it. If we have 300 shows in a season, there's no point to risk an accident for one show if something is not 100% up to the standard. Just wait till it is, and then perform from there.
Speaking of that, how do you keep up? Like, most of the shows are outdoors, right? How do you keep up with show quality and safety? And is there like some sort of industry standards that, even though their country doesn't respect them, or the industry follows?
Well, I would say that if you're talking about the big companies like Disney, Universal, Cirque du Soleil, like they all have their guidelines, which are pretty strict. But when you go more to independent productions and you go to another country, the budget, you just don't have a budget that can be that strict. But in terms of safety, like, there's rigging guidelines and things like that. We have vigorous checks that we do every day on all of our equipment and vehicles. If anything needs to be replaced, it gets replaced. If anything is not up to a code, then it will be out of the show. And so safety is definitely the first priority.
Do you have this temperature is too hot, or this is too wet, or this is too windy specifications for the show?
Oh yeah, weather plays a role, and our show will modify. Things will be cut in certain conditions. If it's raining, if there's lightning, it's a water show. If there's lightning, the show's canceled. Or things slow down. We made a second soundtrack for some rain shows because it tended to extend scenes. Things had to slow down quite a bit, and maybe you had 10 more seconds in a scene than you do when it's dry out.
You're just taking it a little slower.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
In some of the water shows we had some sort of meter to see how far the lightning was happening. Do you use something like that, or do you just play it by ear and see what's safe?
I would wish we had something like that, but no. In this instance, we kind of just we look for it. If we can see it, then we cut it.
It's done.
Yeah,
you're out.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting. So you said you've done some stuff about how to fall, and how did you like one of the tricks you do is falling. So how did you learn to fall? Was there a process in increasing the height, or did you do it? I mean, I know a lot of that was learnt on the job, but is it practice? Is it time? Is it changing it up? How did you up your skill set on that?
Yeah, you just start from a low height and you work your way up, fall into it's called a high fall, and we fall to a pad or an airbag. And the trick to this technique is you have to land flat on your back, and then all the pressure is evenly distributed. So no matter if you're falling head first or feet first or backwards or whatever your fall may be, you always want to land flat on your back. So there's different techniques to get you there to your back at the last moment so that you do it. So any miscalculation is very dangerous. That's when you can, compress your spine or whatever, tweak your neck or worse.
It sounds like a particular type of person that wants to go and do that kind of work, right? Because that kind of just sounds terrifying to me.
Yeah, it is terrifying. Even after maybe I'll be doing a fall. I've done hundreds and hundreds of high falls. But if I walk up to I've been out of work for a few months, but if I were to walk up to the top of a platform and look down, heights just, it still gets you at first. You look down and there's something innate in human nature that tells you, don't do it. And your stomach will kind of rise into your chest the first few times. And then as you kind of get used to it again, it's there.
I think that's healthy, I think that's healthy.
Yeah.
To have that natural fear.
It's like having that respect for the stunt.
There's like that guy that climbed, was it El Capitan, so that movie Free Solo, right? And I mean, that's a level of insanity I cannot even contemplate, because one wrong move and he's gone. And it's just, for me, it's just a level of how much risk an individual's happy to take, And that's again, it goes back to being that psychological game, I guess.
Yeah, I think stunts is very much like sport, because you're learning techniques and you're constantly pushing yourself further and getting better at the things that you're doing. Yeah, like I said before, you're not just like throwing yourself into something. For example, I have a friend who did a cliff dive. It was like over 100 feet in a film. It's very dangerous. That's something you kind of have to specialize for.
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't just go give it a go because I don't have that skill set, because that's very dangerous. You could die. So it's something you train for, you have the skill set for, and the risk, what you're getting into, and whether you're capable of doing it or not. And if you're not, you don't do it.
You guys were mentioning earlier about physical training. What about mental training? How do you prepare yourself to mentally do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is an arbitrary number, but they say 30% is skill, 70% is doing it. I think you can apply that to a lot of things. Personally, I do a lot of visualization. I like to see myself doing it properly over and over. Any of those times where you imagine the worst case scenario or what happens if you do it wrong, try to just push that thought aside and run through it again. And it's really about trust. When you can do something, if you've done it hundreds of times, you have that skill,
Mm.
and you just have to trust your body that you're going to do it and be in the moment. That's very important. You can't be thinking about other things.
So also, I can imagine by visualizing it, you kind of in that kind of meditative state where you're psyching yourself into it, right? If you're visualizing it, the technique and the turn you might have to do and how you have to land, that in itself is a psychological preparation, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of getting yourself into that state. Like, all right, now it's showtime.
Yeah.
Do you apply some of your skills, whether it's physical or mental, to your day-to-day life?
I think that these skills do transfer over, of course. I think very much of my job, there's kind of this weight on my shoulders, especially like overseeing the safety of a team of like 40 people, that injury is an issue. Life and death, it's kind of an issue of life and death, because these things, you could die if you do some of these things wrong. And I think when you take that in your daily life, for the most part, we don't have concerns with life and death. And so when you take that out of the equation, just things seem very easy. The problems you have in life that would maybe normally like really stress you out, it doesn't carry so much weight or stress. So I think I learn a lot of resilience, kind of how to work through the pain, facing your fears, resilience, those kinds of things.
I can totally see how that would play out in your life, because your day-to-day work is so risky. What would be something that you would change about your job or the industry if you had the power to do so? Is there something that you would change?
I think this kind of applies to just business globally in general. And so I've worked with some directors, performers, managers, producers, and there's kind of this old business model that's still in place, and kind of it seems like it's on its way out. But you think of like the stereotypical used car salesman, how they're just trying to say whatever you got to say to get the deal done, cut corners. There's kind of this bottom dollar is the priority. And I've worked with people where they lie about who they know or their experiences. Usually it's kind of an older generation. And I think it's worked in the past, but today, information is at our fingertips. You can fact check anyone. And so you can't really get away with lying anymore. And a lot of these companies, I've seen some companies where they cut corners, maybe with salaries or the safety issues, and they're just trying to save money where they can. Maybe so the money can just go sit in the CEO's bank account, but it doesn't do any good there. Like I think younger entrepreneurs, they're more willing to invest the money in the product, invest in their employees, and it does a lot better for the world than hoarding a bunch of money. So I think that things are moving in that direction, and I kind of hope that they are.
You've mentioned risk and danger and fear and a lot of things, but what gets you to do that? What's the favorite, or what do you like the most about your job?
I don't know. This job it's a dream job, really. Kind of like doing a sport, getting paid for it, performing for packed audiences every day, 4,000 people plus, people cheering for you. There's adrenaline to it. Like, there's a lot of adrenaline when you race down the set in a car, you start drifting around in a car or whatever you're doing. It's fun. It's like I don't know, it's like a child's dream job. If they want to be a cowboy or a pirate or a bad guy or whatever they want to be when they grow up, and you get to play all those parts.
I know. I'm certainly not telling my son that this job exists for a while. As a mother. But yeah, no, it does sound like something that a kid would grow up to want to do. So it's amazing that you get to make a career out of it.
I would say though it is a career with like an expiration date. So like I've been very fortunate that not to have any serious injuries, knock on wood, but it's wear and tear on your body. And for example, this year I went to a chiropractor, and they took an x-ray of my neck, my spine. And I have these bone spurs like on my spine, like pretty significant bone spurs. And they said that you shouldn't have these at your age. Normally they see it at like 60 years old with degenerative arthritis. And they said, they asked me, like, what have you been doing? You have an accident? How is this possible? You're in your 30s. And it's the job. I've compressed my spine. I've had whiplash. I've been smashed and thrown and tossed and dragged and scraped and stitches and whatever, all those things. And so if you do this job, like, you're going to get hurt. It's part of it. It's like if you play rugby, you're going to skin your knees. So there's an expiration date. I see older guys in this business limping around, and I'm young and I feel great, and maybe it'll catch up with me. I don't know. But you don't really realize the impact that it has on your body, like any professional sport too, until you're older.
Anything professional has a long
dancers and all those things, what they do to their knees and their joints, and it's the same in this business.
Yeah. And do you foresee that you would then move into more of that kind of directing, or would you bounce from the industry? Do you have a path out of that? Or
yeah, I've been directing and coordinating more and more. It's kind of the progression of the job. Once you've been a performer for many, many years and you kind of learn that role, then the next transition is to move into a leadership role and directing and coordinating, that kind of thing.
Take your body out of the game.
Yeah, if you're smart, you'll do that slow transition.
Yeah.
Do you have a YouTube channel or a website or somewhere where people can look at some of your projects?
I do have a website. It's ianvancleve.com. That's IANVANCLEVE.com. I don't have a lot available online. I'm kind of a private person. I don't really do too much with that, but hopefully soon this year I'll try to be updating content. I have a reel out there. You can search on YouTube for my name. It's quite an old reel. I also need to update that. For me, it's one of those things I kind of do it as a need basis. And since mostly my work is through people I know, and I don't really have to have a new reel. As soon as I'm applying for a job or a company that I'm not known, then I like to update my stuff. Save it for the last minute.
Yeah, exactly. Put it on when you need it. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really interesting to find out about the stunt world and spending some time with you. So we really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Please write a review on our podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, and let your friends know about us. You can learn more about TheatreArtLife by visiting our website at www.theatreartlife.com. And you can also follow us on social media and leave your questions and comments on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, or YouTube. We want to thank David Sire for composing the music for our podcast, and Michelle Shirata, who is our sound engineer. We're your hosts, Anna and Anna, and this is the Theatre Art Life podcast, where we put the spotlight on those who create live entertainment around the world.